I must rise above the flames.
Welcome back, Flick Knaves. I'm Lupinefiasco, this is Daily FaB Gameplay, and today we are playing Cindra, Dracai of Retribution. For anyone who is new to the channel, welcome to the Empire. What we do here is review replays of games I played on the Talishar.net client days or weeks ago, after enough time has passed that I lose my bias and can more objectively judge the quality of my games. I will talk through turn cycles as if I were taking them now, giving my thought process for the lines I would take, and comparing those to the lines I did take at the time of recording. We either learn from my mistakes or reinforce good play patterns with the overall goal of tightening and optimizing our gameplay in the future to take down paper events and walk away with that shiny, shiny cardboard. If you like what you see and would like to try this deck for yourself on Talishar, there is a FaB deck link in the video description below. While you're down there, if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It is the best free way to support me and to make sure that you see every new episode of Daily FaB Gameplay in your YouTube feed. I also have a Blue Sky, a Discord, and a Patreon, links to which are in the video description. Patrons at the Arc Lightning tier or higher will get access to all of my matchup guides for all of my deck lists forever, including this one. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into the gameplay. I have a few comments on today's game, the first being that I know people tend to dislike watching mirror matches. My YouTube analytics would support that, but listen, Cindra's won 2 callings in 2 weekends. If you're bringing her to a Road to Nationals event, you're going to need to have to know how to play out the mirror. Winning the die roll, obviously very crucial. February stats would put you at a 19% higher chance of winning if you go second rather than first. I did win the die roll, I do win this game, but our opponent came pretty close, so I'm interested to analyze what they did to try to get that edge. Second is that this is the last game that I'll be playing with my version of Yuki Lee Bender's Cindra list. Yuki put out her free deck list, paid sideboard guide, and paid matchup notes on her Patreon, a link to which is in the video description below, comparing my list that I pulled from her and Brody's calling games compared to the list that she put out on FaB, which showed that I did get a few cards wrong. So the rest of the Cindra games I play this week and potentially next week will be using her updated list, her correct list, with the sideboard guide. So look forward to that. Like I said, we won the die roll and we are going second. That is a massive help in any aggro mirror, but particularly in the Cindra mirror, where neither of us really have on hits, we're just doing damage. So the fact that I get to block whatever my opponent is doing on turn 0 and then respond in kind is very good. So our opponent either trying to test our 3 blocks, of which we have 2 blocks, which we can cover this round in Renegade, and then a Wax On for potentially a Blaze Headlong or Art of the Dragon Blood. They are looking to potentially push damage with Flick Knives. It's going to be a little difficult for them. They can Flick a Knife, put us to 39, but they can't rebuy the dagger, and while that is fine for the most part, you only need to throw a single dagger to keep your Mask of Momentum chain alive. It can be bad if you draw into something like a Wrath of Retribution, which really wants you to start the turn with 2 daggers. So our opponent there just testing our ability to block. If we had had 1 fewer 3 block, we leak some damage. If we didn't have that Wax On, we leak some damage. Maybe our opponent keeps pushing with the arsenaled card. But our opponent's goal coming out of turn 0 is always to arsenal something. If you are Cindra and you're going first in the mirror, you always want to end with an arsenal. It is a lot easier to push a Mask of Momentum trigger with 5 cards than it is with 4. Now, like I said, we are advantaged in this matchup because we are going second. So it's going to be a lot harder for our opponent to block what we're doing than it was for us to block them. So we're thinking about sequencing, and we're thinking about a potential arsenal if we don't draw for Mask of Momentum. Notably, our opponent is playing Snapdragon Scalers and not Dragon Scalar Flight Path, which means they have one fewer point of block. So we can attack with a dagger and feel pretty good that it will connect. Our sequencing here says that I want to open with Ignite, which will discount the cost of a dagger. Then I want to attack with yellow Brand with Cinderclaw. So at this point my chain is Ignite, Dagger, Brand. Brand is threatening a Mask of Momentum trigger. My opponent gives me a card from hand to block the Brand. I flick daggers. The kunai that I attacked with, that keeps my Mask of Momentum chain alive. Then I play Art of the Dragon Blood. Because it is draconic thanks to Brand, I get Go Again. I am also threatening a 4-power breakpoint that is a Mask of Momentum trigger. So maybe my opponent has the D-React to block out the Art of the Dragon. If they give me 2 cards, that's great for me. I either draw and get to play the thing off the top, or I just arsenal my red Brand with Cinderclaw and pass. The reason I want to basically sequence 2-1-2-4 is that I want to make blocking difficult or at least obnoxious for my opponent. So blocking 2-1-2, they can do any of that with a single card, right? They either have 2 or 3 blocks in hand. They can give a single 2 block to stop the Brand with Cinderclaw. But then Art of the Dragon Blood is a lot harder to block. They either have the defense reaction or they need to give me 2 cards. And if they give me 2 cards, that means they've blocked with 3 cards total. And Cindra on a 3-card hand really can't threaten a Mask of Momentum trigger without Ignite. So your goal in this matchup is to put your Cindra on 2 cards if you can, either through blocks or because they drew bad, so that they cannot threaten a Mask of Momentum trigger. And even if you put your Cindra on 3 cards, you only have to block one of the chain links, you don't have to block both. So our opponent here probably wisely deciding to just let us have the Mask of Momentum trigger if they need to keep 5 cards, or if they just can't really expect to block us out. We're just pushing damage, and we'll see what our opponent can do with 5 cards. We're going to flick knives here, we get our value, and we get to immediately rebuy the dagger with Cindra. I'm choosing not to put a counter on my blood-splattered vest for one thing. Art of the Dragon Blood doesn't have Go Again, so we can't attack with a dagger. But there's also tension in we want to be using our stain counters. This is an aggro mirror, so if we end the game with 0 counters on our blood-splattered vest, we missed value somewhere in there. We could have at least gotten 2 dagger attacks over the course of the game, and maybe that 2 points of damage matters. But on the other hand, if we're using our stains as quickly as they become available, we burn through the vest, we lose 1 point of block, and if we haven't been drawing 1 costs, well, we're probably going to start drawing into them. And if we're drawing into our 1 costs and we don't have a way to cheat out a resource to pay for them, our game looks a lot more difficult to win. So we're in a spot where I don't mind that we didn't use our vest on our last turn, but based on our opponent being a 26, they're keeping a 5-card hand, we could potentially keep a 5-card hand. We're in a spot where we're going to want to start thinking about our vest very soon. Now, blocking Cindra is not something we need to do on Chain Link 1. This Fire Tenet does represent a 4 or potentially 5 power attack on Cindra's next Chain Link. 5 power if it's Blaze Headlong, 4 power if it's any of her head jabs. But we don't need to block this. 5-card Cindra is a little more difficult to block out, but 4-card Cindra says that you want to be blocking Chain Links 2 and 3. You block on Chain Link 2, they flick knives to keep the Mask of Momentum chain alive. You block on Chain Link 3 because that blocks out the Mask of Momentum for the turn. The reason you don't want to block on Chain Link 1 out of a 4-card hand is that your opponent then says, great, here's my 3-card hand, where you still have to block me 2 times. They just don't flick on Chain Link 1, then they do flick on Chain Link 3, and you have to block again on Chain Link 4. The reason you would not look to block on Chain Links 3 and 4 is that Chain Link 4 is where Cindra's finishers live. Breaking Point and Lava Burst being the two that actively care about Rupture, but Art of the Dragon being just a 5-power attack that your Cindra is probably going to look to end the turn with. So if you're expecting to block on Chainlink 4, you're probably going to need to use 2 cards, just based on the nature of Rupture. So block on Chainlinks 2 and 3. Now 5-card Cindra really messes with that math. We probably are looking to block on Chainlinks 3 and 4, and just expecting that if our Cindra has 2 finishers, maybe we're in trouble, or maybe she has 4 head jabs and 1 finisher, and we can get her blocking on 3 and 4. All of this is to say we're not going to block this Fire Tenant. There is no on-hit related to this. We don't... The +1 happens regardless of what we do, so we can just take this. As far as what we don't want to block with, we're really hoping to hold on to this Display Loyalty and probably Hot on their heels. We have a brand with Cinderclaw in Arsenal that kicks us off on Display Loyalty so that we can make a fealty, which we really care about. The Ancestral Empowerment might be worth keeping. It really depends on what we draw into, but that might be what we want to hold on to. Attack with brand with Cinderclaw, then Display Loyalty. Maybe our opponent blocks it, and we get to Ancestral Empowerment over the top of blocks, draw a card, and depending on what we draw, if it's a 1 cost, now we know that we need to Flick Knives and use our Vest. Maybe those are the 3 we want to block with. Blocking here on Chainlink 1 feels like a bad idea, or at least it's committing to needing to use 3 cards on defense, because now effectively Cindra has a 4-card hand, and on a 4-card hand we need to block twice in order to prevent the Mask of Momentum trigger. Out of a 5-card hand, I'm guessing the best 2 are probably 3 and 4, like I said, maybe 2 and 3. It's sort of up in the air, it's nebulous, and there are a lot of sequencing decisions that can come in when Cindra is having access to 5 cards. You can start with head jab, that gets blocked out, go to Ignite and not Flick. It's very complicated. So I think blocking on Chainlink 1 was a mistake, but I'm not going to be overly critical because I just don't have experience in this matchup, and 5-card Cindra is very difficult to block. We're not going to block this Art of the Dragon Blood. We are going to save resources. This is now active, so depending on what our opponent does next, we may need to just give them the draw, and I think that is what we're going to want to do here. This 4-card hand is basically guaranteed to draw with Mask of Momentum because we play 3 head jabs, 1 of them gets blocked, we can Flick Knives to keep the chain alive, the 3rd one gets blocked, we Ancestral Empowerment over the top, draw a card from Ancestral, potentially even a 2nd card from Mask of Momentum. So this might just be a situation where we are signing up to take all of this damage. We're giving Cindra her Momentum trigger, and Hot on Their Heels marks us, which basically translates into a fealty because we can't deal with the Flick Knives. Here, weird situation. Cindra has already drawn for Mask of Momentum. This Snatch would put us down to 25. She does have the Snapdragon Scalers if she wants to give this go again. It depends on what she has in hand, where we don't know if it is something like Art of the Dragon Fire, which is not online. Maybe it's a Breaking Point and we want to block that. My thinking here is that we just take 4. Cindra already has a card in hand, so she already has something to arsenal. So the Snatch is not really representing too much more value. And if Cindra uses her Snapdragon Scalers, we're at 25 after the Snatch hits, and Cindra can't snap anymore. So it's like, is this the best case outcome for us, that Cindra is snapping a Snatch? No, I would prefer that this Snatch was something like a Lava Burst. But at the same time, it is just gone. She doesn't have it anymore. We're going to take 3 here. This doesn't matter. There's no on-hit. This is just damage. It puts us down to 22. We're only at a 4-point deficit. Technically 3 because we have our Dragon Scalar Flight Path. and we get to keep a 4-card hand that will basically translate into a 6-card hand, assuming that Cindra blocks the way that we think she would. Cindra here playing out the Art of the Dragon Blood. This is a good play if you expect that your opponent has Breaking Point, which she could very well think that we do have. We kept 4 cards. That is sort of the minimum necessary to put out a Breaking Point. But it does mean that she is only playing off of 4 cards on her next turn. We're expecting that she will need to block with something, and this just puts us in a good spot to take tempo back from Cindra. So like I said, the sequencing here is going to be Brand with Cinderclaw, Display Loyalty, Hot on Their Heels. I don't love stacking my on-hits. I would prefer to spread out Hot on Their Heels and Mask of Momentum so that Cindra is maybe not as incentivized to block the Hot on Their Heels and we get to mark. But because we have Ancestral Empowerment as our way to push an on-hit over the top, I am more interested in making sure that Hot on Their Heels is the one with the on-hit. So I like using Ancestral Empowerment here to get both my draw and mark. Fealty is really important in this matchup, and I want to make sure that I am creating it basically as often as I can. So we get to Ancestral Empowerment. I'm assuming that Cindra does not have the Shelter from the Storm, which I'm assuming she would have used when we Flick Knives'd. Our Hot on Their Heels connects, so we not only draw from Ancestral Empowerment, we also draw from Demonstrate Devotion, and we get to mark the opposing Cindra. We draw into a 1-cost, so while I believe my intention for Vest was to just work in another dagger, instead we get to throw out 4 with Go Again, make a fealty, stack 3 fealties, which is incredible value. I am not looking to attack with Burning Blade Dance here. I want to arsenal it because I am not assuming that opposing Cindra is going to be able to interact with my arsenal. I doubt she's on Command and Conquer. She can't throw off a Breaking Point. So having a 5th card available for next turn just means that I am more likely to continue to trigger Mask of Momentum. Like I said, 5-card Cindra is much scarier than 4-card Cindra. And Burning Blade Dance kind of just damage. We draw pretty well, so Oath of Loyalty to kick off our turn. We get to throw some Burning Blade Dances, probably end my attack chain with Rising Resentment in case we draw with Mask of Momentum. We can order our triggers so that we draw from Mask first, and if we draw into a 1-cost, we can banish it to Rising Resentment, then play it. Wax On is a great card to save for Arsenal, and we have 3 fealties. So if we do trigger Mask of Momentum and draw something like Ravenous Rabble off the top, then we get to pop a fealty and play it. Am I thinking that I want to flick Vest? Probably not. I don't think it's really something that I'm too interested in doing. This game is kind of coming to a close, but we've already used one of our stain counters, and I'm pretty sure that we'll find the opportunity to use one more before we even need to think about blocking with Vest or using the last stain counter. And we're not going to flick on that Oath of Loyalty. Like I said, with a 4-card hand, when you can attack 4 times, you are fine letting Chainlink 1 go fully blocked, because that means that you can start to think about flicking later in the turn, force more blocks from your opponent. So that being said, do we want to flick here? And I think the answer is no. I think what I would like to do with this hand is let this Burning Blade Dance go fully blocked, play my next Burning Blade Dance. I am assuming that one doesn't get blocked unless my Cindra's hand is just absolute garbage and she's just looking to get as much value as she can. If this second Burning Blade Dance doesn't get blocked out, then we Flick Knives, we use our Vest, make a resource, and attack with the other kunai. And that means that we get to keep our Mask of Momentum chain with Burning Blade Dance, kunai, Rising Resentment. Using the stain counter here to make a resource, I'm expecting kunai. I can then attack with Rising Resentment, which is maybe something that gets blocked so that we don't draw from Mask of Momentum, and then we get to finish our chain link with Burning Blade Dance. Here, I attack with the Burning Blade Dance. Enemy Cindra lets it go through. As I recall, we get the undo. I think both of us forgot that this was a Mask of Momentum trigger. So like I said, I want to throw off Rising Resentment here because I want Burning Blade Dance to be what gets through if the Rising Resentment here gets blocked. If our Cindra does not let us draw for Mask of Momentum, which I'm not expecting them to, I want the Burning Blade Dance to be the follow-up. Like I said, I'm trying not to stack on hits when I can avoid it. In this case, we've already attacked with this kunai, so if we don't get to flick it with Burning Blade Dance, we just lose it. We'll activate Cindra at the end of our chain link. We will rebuy all of our Draconic Daggers in Graveyard. For now, there's just the one, unless this Burning Blade Dance connects, in which case we get to flick our currently existing kunai, and we rebuy both of them with Cindra. We don't need to vest here. We could if we wanted to attack with another kunai. One of the two that we buy back, we really don't. We still have Wrath of Retribution in our deck. There's kind of no reason to end with a kunai down. We still have plenty of one costs, so we are fine to just keep our last stain counter. This hand is insane. We get to brand Lava Vein Loyalty, Blaze Headlong, Lava Burst, work a kunai into that chain somewhere. We should probably block with our Flight Path here just to make sure that we get our value, because if my turn looks like Brand with Cinderclaw, that gets blocked. Lava Vein Loyalty, Blaze Headlong, Lava Burst, and we draw from the Lava Burst, then depending on what we draw, I might be looking to Flight Path, and I would have liked to have gotten my point of block from it. What does attacking with kunai do for us? What attacking with kunai does for us is let us sequence kunai, Lava Vein Loyalty, Blaze Headlong, Lava Burst, Float a Resource. But more importantly, and here's where I think I just screwed up, is I can, instead of attacking with the kunai, attack with the Lava Vein Loyalty. Maybe that's the one that gets blocked. I can not flick, then attack with the second kunai, Blaze Headlong, Lava Burst. So I got a 3 block on my Lava Vein Loyalty, and now my opponent needs to probably block with 2 or even 3 more cards to stop my mask trigger, which is way better. And I don't know why I'm flick knivesing here either, because effectively we just restart our chain after the second kunai gets blocked. So I think this was a mistake. I like pitching the brand with Cinderclaw. I think that was a good line so that we get 5 attacks, and our opponent needs to block probably 3 of them. But I think the sequencing was wrong. I think Dagger, Lava Vein, Dagger, Blaze, Lava Burst was better. Now, we're still just so far ahead that this really doesn't matter. We're just throwing a bunch of damage, saying you have 4 cards, we're at 13, we get to block with all of our armor, and we have a Wax On in Arsenal, so we're chilling. And if our opponent wants to go down to 2, that just means that they are 2 flick knives away from death. We can start attacking with the kunai as well, really prioritizing getting those in. We use our last stains counter on the vest. Even drawing into another Wax On here, and we've drawn Art of the Dragon Fire with Fealty, so all we need to do to win this game is stay alive with Art of the Dragon Fire and a card in hand. And what that means is I want to use my Wax On from Arsenal here, cover up the 4. We do just get maximum value from Wax On, even over blocking, but Cindra isn't really throwing too many 5s, so blocking 5 with Wax On is about as good as we can get from it. Block with Wax On from Arsenal, we can block with Wax On from hand, we have a 3-block breaking point, and then we just keep Burning Blade Dance and Art of the Dragon Fire. We can block with our Mask of Momentum as well. When your opponent is at 3 or less, Mask of Momentum just blocks for 2. The on-hit for Mask of Momentum is your opponent loses the game because they just die, right? If you hit 3 times with Mask of Momentum and your opponent's at 3, they die. Very interesting Wrath of Retribution here. I didn't put my opponent on it. So they get to attack with Wrath. Wrath comes in for 3. My opponent has already spent both daggers, but they do have Cindra. So a Cindra activation gets them 4 more damage, putting us to 2. And with a Stains counter left, this last card in hand could potentially be Art of Dragonfire. They have a fealty now, so if my opponent's turn is 3-2-2-7, we're in a lot of trouble, especially if we take the 3-2-2 and then they just shoot us for 2. We have no damage prevention, so we're going to have to start blocking here, which makes me think that the Wrath of Retribution should get blocked by Breaking Point. We can then block a dagger with our Mask of Momentum. We can block a second dagger with our Dragonscaler Flight Path. I don't know that this particularly makes much of a difference, blocking with the equipment rather than a card. It's kind of just the same thing. Like I said, we're looking to block with our armor, with Breaking Point, and with Wax on this turn. It probably would have been better to use the Breaking Point on the Wrath of Retribution, if only so that we could then block this kunai with Mask of Momentum, and the next kunai with Flight Path. We take a little less damage, or at least use our block value more efficiently. We can't block either of these kunai for 3 without going over value. And here we've got a Breaking Point for 5. This just represents lethal. There is no on-hit that we care about because we don't have an arsenal, but we still want to prevent this damage, and as I said, we don't need to keep any cards in our hand besides Art of the Dragonfire and something to pay for it. We also don't have a line where we can flick our kunai to generate a resource because we only have the one kunai. I was thinking, what if we did something like Pitch Burning Blade Dance, attack with kunai, flick knives, make a resource with Vest, Art of the Dragonfire? Well, that doesn't work because if the kunai gets blocked, then we don't have a chance to make that resource and we can't play the Art of the Dragonfire. So we could keep 3 cards. Let's look for something like Pitch Breaking Point, attack with kunai, play Burning Blade Dance, flick the kunai, whatever. Or we just preserve life, and I think preserving life is probably the best way to play the rest of this turn. If we had blocked more efficiently, we should be at more life, should have more life to play with, but we can just play this hand efficiently. Blocking with Flick Knives here seems greedy. I wonder if I am looking to do a line like Pitch Breaking Point for kunai into play Art of the Dragonfire, where if this kunai connects, then we get to use our last Stain counter, make a resource, attack with Burning Blade Dance, then attack with Art of the Dragonfire. I don't know, it just seems greedy to me compared to keeping our Flick Knives, being at 5 here instead of 4, and still telling our opponent, you need to, 1, have damage prevention, or you just die to fire, or you give us a bunch of cards. So the Flick Knives here does get, the kunai does get blocked by Flick Knives. I thought it might, which is why I was not overly concerned with going down to 2 cards in hand and really trying to cheat out this Art of the Dragonfire. But again, just asking our opponent, do you have the prevention? And they don't. So fairly even value per turn there. I think where our opponent got us close to dying was they just had better draws than we did. They had a few really good turns. Wrath of Retribution coming in at the end was just a ton of value. But where we were ahead was that we went second. That is kind of what it came down to. But our opponent got really close, wanted to show off this game. I thought the wax-offs here were pretty good. Ultimately, they could have been something like Shelter from the Storm. Art of the Dragonfire was great. We made a bunch of fealty and got to sit on it. Not the most exciting Cindra game, honestly, but like I said, important to know how to play from behind, especially when from behind means that you lost the die roll. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. If so, be sure to head jab that like button. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. If you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It's free. It helps me out a lot. I will be posting more Cindra content all of this week, and possibly next week as well. using Yuki's actual 80 and her sideboard guide, so a lot to learn from there. Yuki's sideboard guide is available for sale. That link is in the video description, as well as links to my Blue Sky, Discord, and Patreon. Patreon users at the Arc Lightning tier and above will get all of my deck lists and sideboard guides forever, so great deal, if I do say so myself. I will be back later this week with more daily FaB gameplay, and until I see you, take care.